Hi, everyone. Welcome to Department of Medicine Grand Rounds. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Adrian Lazarovich. I'm the one of the inpatient chief residents here at UW. There will be hopefully a few moments for questions at the end. We'll see. Ken is shaking his head at me, so we'll see. But if there are, we'll hold questions until the end, and then feel free to put them in the chat and I'll read them out at the end. So with that, we'll get started, and I'll say I have the great privilege of introducing our speaker today, who was the person who called and told me I had matched to residency here at UW almost exactly 4 years ago. So it is a great honor to introduce Ken Steinberg today. So Ken is a professor of medicine here at the University of Washington School of Medicine. He was the program director for the UW's internal medicine residency program for 17 years between 2000 and 2020, 2007 and 2024. And he is now the inaugural vice chair for education here in the Department of Medicine. Ken grew up in New England. He went to school all around the Northeast and then moved to Seattle for his fellowship training in pulmonary and critical care medicine here at UW, where he subsequently joined the faculty. He still practices clinically in both the Montlake and Harborview medical ICUs, and unless I'm very much mistaken, is attending in the Montlake MICU as we speak. He also practices at Harborview's chest clinic. And while he was initially a researcher in the area of acute lung injury and ARDS, it was during a medical education sabbatical at the University of Melbourne in 2006 that he rediscovered his passion for medical education, which prompted him to set aside much of that research, commit himself full-time to medical education, and he hasn't looked back since, much to our benefit. In addition to his family, residents, faculty, and staff, he loves food, cooking, the outdoors, kayaking, skiing, poetry, cheese, West Seattle, me too, a good Northwest Amber, and food again. His talk today is an introduction to his new role as the Vice Chair of Education. And thank you so much for being here today, Ken. We really appreciate it. And without any further ado, take it away.
Thanks, Adrian. And I really appreciate that introduction. And thanks, everybody, for being here today. For me to talk a little bit about this new role of Vice Chair for Education and hopefully how we can elevate and sustain excellence in education in our department. But as Adrian said, I was the residency program director here for 17 years. And so I have to just start with a little bit of gratitude to all of the residents who've come through the program. 17 years working with all of the residents has just been the best job in my whole entire career. Here you see a couple of pictures from end of the year celebrations with the last graduating class of residents and the incoming group of amazing chief residents this year. I did a little bit of calculating at the end of last year, and 1,105 residents graduated from the program, came through the program while I was program director, which is just astounding. And I got this hat from Michelle Zhang, who is a member of last year's graduating class, and she alphabetically was the last person in the class. So she claimed the right to be resident number 1105 and gave me this wonderful baseball hat, which I continue to wear, but it's been amazing. I also want to express my gratitude to these 4 chairs of medicine who were chairs during my time as program director and now vice chair for education. Bill Bremner was the chair who hired me into that role, and I am forever grateful for that opportunity. Ginny Brody was an interim chair for a while, and then Barbara Young became our chair in 2019 for 5 years. And Trish Critic is now our interim chair right now. All four of these people have been incredibly supportive of the work that I've wanted to do to evolve the residency program and starting with Barbara and now working with Trish to create this new role of vice chair for education. So just tons of gratitude. I also owe a lot of thanks and gratitude to this amazing group of associate program directors. They're listed alphabetically, not chronologically, but these are all of the people who worked as associate program directors, and some are still working as associate program directors for the program. An amazing bunch of educators. And John Cho now, of course, has taken over as the new residency program director. This group of people are so much fun. They are my professional friends and colleagues. We're goofy together. Here's a picture from a national meeting several years ago, but they are just really terrific. And similarly, all of the program administrators who've worked in the program since I was the residency program director, again, listed alphabetically. These are the people who actually do the work and make the program run. And I would be remiss not calling out, especially Kelly Corning, who is my professional colleague and remains my professional colleague for just so long. Well, let me transition a little bit. I'm just again wanted to share how much gratitude I'm filled with, but I want to switch gears now and talk about this role of vice chair for education. And I want to start with thinking about, why do physicians even work here? Why do physicians work in an academic medical center? And I think it has to do with three main things, which are often the main missions of academic medicine. I think people work in academic medical centers in part or solely for the clinical mission, the passion to work with the underserved, or the fascination of working with just highly complex medical problems. Those are the two big things that we see here in our academic medical center. The research mission, whether they do research themselves or are excited to work in an environment, a culture where research is taking place and new things are being developed and discovered. And then finally, opportunities to teach. And I think these are the three main reasons why people work in our academic medical center. But the education mission currently feels under threat. And actually, it's really all of these missions that currently feel like they are under attack. The financial crises affecting universities and academic medical centers with research funding in jeopardy, clinical funding in jeopardy, both because of changes at the federal level and state budgetary crises. These financial crises force us to focus even more on clinical productivity and clinical revenue. And that leads less time to teach and less money to pay for teaching. And the pushback on health equity and on DEI work also feels like a real threat to our mission. But nevertheless, I'm going to focus on the education mission today, even recognizing all of what we do is under threat. I want to review our departmental mission and some of our new strategic priorities. Our tagline, which I love, we teach, we heal, we discover. And our mission statement on our website is that we are deeply dedicated to our missions of teaching, healing, discovery, and diversity. And that with regards to teaching, our mission is that future physicians and scientists will have opportunities to train in a broad range of settings with the diverse patient population and some of the best minds in academic medicine as role models. Our mission is that our faculty members teach the latest in evidence-based practice, as well as the oldest of human values, compassion and respect for patients and their families. And finally, our mission is that our residencies and fellowships and training programs will be considered among the best programs in the country. To advance all of our missions, a few years ago, Barbara Young started a strategic planning process that Tom Gallagher oversaw. And 4 strategic priorities came out of that process, 2 of which I want to focus on today: investing in our trainees, our staff, and our faculty, and elevating and sustaining excellence in education. And again, that's our mission, even though it feels under attack. And these are our strategic priorities. And we are going to stay true to those. And I hope my new role will help us achieve those. But before we go into some of that, I also want to reflect a little bit on why teach? Why do we teach? Why do clinicians teach? And I recently read a really wonderful essay written by Juan Lessing and Vineet Chopra. Juan Lessing is a graduate of our program. He was a chief resident at Harborview. He is now a hospitalist and a mid-career faculty member at the University of Colorado. And Vineet Chopra is the chair of medicine at the University of Colorado. And they just recently published this essay. And they wrote what we all know: many clinicians, many clinician educators say that they love to teach. Teaching enhances clinician educator knowledge. It supports the development of the next generation of learners and ultimately benefits ultimately benefits patients. But they reflected on what do we gain from teaching? Like, we say we love to teach, but why? What do we gain from teaching? And they referred in their essay to work done by Daniel Pink in his book Drive, and many of you are familiar with this work. But Pink argues that the key to motivation isn't just external rewards like money or status. Those things can be nice, but the key to motivation are actually intrinsic factors such as autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And Lessing and Chopra applied these to the role of the clinician teacher in medicine. Autonomy is defined as a choice over what to do and how to do it. And in medicine, there have been increasing limitations on professional autonomy, some of which have been good, but some of which make us feel like just a cog in a machine cranking through the work every day. But Lessing and Chopra point out that teaching in the clinical environment remains one of the few domains where educators actually maintain some control and some autonomy. They have autonomy over what, when, and how to teach as they lead and teach the teams and the learners that they're working with. Teaching grants us the flexibility to emphasize whatever it is we feel is important in the moment, either medical knowledge or effective communication, connecting with patients, conflict resolution, leadership, etc., strategies for lifelong learning. We get to decide that as teachers. And the autonomy inherent in teaching honors the experience and the expertise of the clinician and allows them to practice in ways that align with their professional judgment. And so autonomy is one of the things that drives and motivates us to teach. Mastery is the desire to get better and better at something that matters. Pink argues, and Lessing and Chopra talk about the fact that motivation arises not just from achieving perfection, but actually from the ongoing pursuit of getting better and better at what we do. And clinical teaching encourages this pursuit of mastery. Educators often feel motivated to model their best professional selves in the presence of learners, and it forces us to refine our knowledge. Think about it. Every time you teach, you have to kind of bone up a little bit and make sure you're teaching the right things. It encourages us to articulate our clinical reasoning and justify our decisions in front of our learners, and really provides an opportunity for this continuous cycle of self-examination, reflection, and adaptation. So this mastery, this desire to get better, clinical teaching fosters that. And then finally, the motivational factor of purpose, the desire to contribute to something that is deeply meaningful and important. And clinician educators often derive their sense of purpose from their teaching. It amplifies their impact as they transfer knowledge, foster social change in the work they do, and build connections with their learners. Being a teacher has this exponential effect, this ability to affect change in a much greater way as our learners become our peers, who might then be even more effective and more conscientious than ourselves as agents for social change. So this exponential impact is part of our purpose. So what do clinicians gain from teaching? They gain autonomy, they gain mastery, they gain purpose. And what does Pink tell us? That leads to job satisfaction. That leads to a happier, more satisfied community of workers, in our case, faculty here in academic medicine. And I think it's really important to think about that as, again, we think about how we might invest in our trainees and our faculty and what we might do to elevate and sustain excellence in teaching. One of the things that came out of the strategic planning process was to hire a vice chair for education. And so I want to talk a little bit now about what that role is and looks like. What is a vice chair for education? If you go to the literature, there's actually very little written about this. I'm only aware of 6 or 7 studies about vice chairs of education across lots of different specialties, including by Dr. Deborah Cowley, a psychiatrist here at the University of Washington, who wrote about the role of a vice chair in departments of psychiatry. It's been written about for radiology, pediatrics, emergency medicine, and OBGYN. But Erica Brownfield started this literature back now 12, 13 years ago, when she and her group published the results of a survey on the activities and responsibilities of vice chairs in departments of medicine. And in that study, in that survey, they found that at the time, again, 13 years ago, 2/3 of academic departments of medicine had a vice chair for education position. We did not at that time, but 2/3 of academic departments had one. Of vice chairs of education around the country, about half were general internists and about half were internal medicine subspecialists. Most were at the rank of professor, some were at the rank of associate professor, and very few were assistant professors. But what was interesting at the time, and what seems to have changed, but what was true at the time was that the vast majority of vice chairs had additional responsibilities. 58% were also the residency program director. 19% were the medical student clerkship director. 17% held a position in the dean's office. 15% were other course directors in the medical school. And so almost all of the vice chairs at the time had additional responsibilities. And again, anecdotally speaking to many of other vice chairs at other departments of medicine, this has evolved, and more over time, it is becoming more of a unique role. So in this survey, Brownfield asked, what do you do? What are your responsibilities? And much of what those vice chairs said in the survey were that there were four general themes to their work. One was to oversee educational programs of the department, to sort of be the DIO, the designated institutional official for the department. Another was to possess and develop educational expertise in themselves, but more importantly, in others, and to advocate for that development for the faculty and to champion the educational mission within the department. Many saw part of their role as promoting educational scholarship and to serve in leadership activities within the department. Within these four themes, then, there were 16 more specific expectations of vice chairs of education at the time. And I won't read through this entire list. You can look at it. But it ranges from organizing the structure and coordinating the educational programs from UME to GME and even to CME, to oversee the administrative support of educational programs, the financing of education, mentoring and faculty development, et cetera. And so these were many of the expectations that are in the literature for what a vice chair of education in departments of medicine might do. So now I have the role. Now what? As I thought about, okay, how are we going to apply this to our department here at the University of Washington? I found four recommendations as you think about creating a new position. And this is from the paper from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. But four recommendations when defining the role. Assure role clarity and co-develop guidelines for responsibility. Identify departmental educational initiatives and faculty development initiatives utilizing best educational practices. Implement and evaluate educational initiatives to enhance faculty well-being and promote a robust clinical learning environment. And then to integrate with other vice chairs of education within their institution and as part of national organizations to allow collaboration and such. So I thought, okay, how to go about doing this, co-developing and identifying important initiatives. And I thought, well, I have ideas about, what we should do, but that's not co-development. And so for the first several months of having this role, I embarked on what I refer to as a listening tour. I went around and I met with leaders in our department in our hospitals and in our medical schools. And and the motivation for this listening tour was, yes, to co-develop the role, but for us to be able to say 3 to 5 years from now, wow, that was really an important addition to our department. How did we even function without a vice chair for education? If 5 years from now, our faculty can say that, then this will have been a successful change. And to learn what steps and processes and what accomplishments we needed to do in order to say that this was a success. So as I went on this listening tour, I developed 5 specific questions that I asked of everyone I met with. I asked, what are the unmet needs in supporting the education mission of our department? What are the major gaps or the major challenges that we have to be able to achieve our education mission? I asked, how can a vice chair help our programs, our faculty, UW Medicine, and even our hospitals? And I asked, what are your ideas for important projects and initiatives or partnerships to work on or develop? Um, I asked how you would prioritize those. And then I also asked about what do I need to watch out for as I start embarking on this work? What are the hidden pitfalls that I need to be aware of? Um, I'm going to focus on the first 3 of these questions moving forward, but I wound up meeting with 49 different people and then one large group of hospitalists. I met with our interim chair. I met with other vice chairs and associate chairs, division heads, service chiefs, clerkship directors, residency directors, fellowship administrators, and program administrators. I met with people in the dean's office. I even got to meet with Tim Dellett, our dean. And I met with other people from around the school. And in response to those questions from these 49 people, I got 225 responses with 100 unique ideas. The reason it's not 225 is that many of these ideas were echoed by multiple people. And I want to share with you some of what I heard from people. I'm going to start with just some quotes from people I met with that really resonated with me, that really tell a bit of the story about what people are experiencing in our department right now. And then I'll get into some of the more specifics. The first quote that really resonated with me, and that I actually heard a similar theme from many people is, quote, "We've lost the culture of education and the desire for education. The pressure to get clinical work done fast makes it harder to find time to teach. On light days, I'm happy to have fellows, but not on busy days. The teaching has gotten lost. How do we teach in an environment like this? It seems that both the time and the eagerness to teach has been lost." That reflects a cultural shift, and this phrase "eagerness to teach" actually came up several times. Another quote, "The greatest risk to our educational mission is the pull towards clinical productivity." Another quote from someone who is in leadership but is somewhat new to our department came to us from another institution. "What is missing here is the medical student and resident presence in our outpatient clinics. At X," the other institution they were at, "there were constantly learners in clinic. Teaching was so every day, and faculty were expected to teach no matter what, no matter where they were. It helped us be better practitioners when in the presence of learners. We have more obstacles to that in our system. We are so alone in clinic. We seem to have lost the culture of education and teaching, at least on the outpatient side, although that other quote was about the inpatient side. There is less of a desire to do this. And then someone else said, I don't even know what the expectation is. Quote, what is the baseline expectation for teaching from our faculty? Another quote from a division head. This one really resonated with me as I thought about things to do in my role. My faculty don't need more faculty development workshops that they don't have time to go to. They need the time to go to the things that already exist. Creating more things they can't participate in only makes them feel worse. That just really stuck with me. And some of you whom I've spoken with have heard me repeat that to you. Another faculty member, teaching feels less rewarded now. And some faculty are actually wary about working with the new generation of learners. These two things negatively impact the faculty's eagerness to teach. There's that phrase again, eagerness to teach. And finally, a couple of more quotes. Someone told me poor teaching is recognized. And then as they explained, because we then talk to those people and they don't wind up teaching again. Exceptional teaching is recognized. We have a few departmental teaching awards to recognize people, but what about everyone else? What about all of the other amazing faculty who are doing all of this teaching every day? This came from someone very high up in our medical school. Having teaching programs makes our healthcare delivery better. And they were, I mean, I believe that they believe this. Someone else, the mission is that everyone should teach. You can never turn away learners. And then finally, a vice chair for education can help us by upholding the importance and value of education alongside our clinical and research missions. I don't know if any of these quotes resonate with you, but they certainly resonate with me. And as I took the answers to these various questions, the 100 unique responses, I sorted them into themes and domains. And at first cut, they actually fell within 18 different themes or domains. I actually think I can do more work around this and probably collapse this list even further. But you can see some of the themes here that came out in some of the quotes. There's no protected time for teaching. We need more protected time for teaching. We need more support to increase med ed scholarship. We need more professional development. There needs to be more administrative support and infrastructure for our educational programs. We really need to reestablish this value and this culture of education that used to be so strong here. Several people spoke about the fact that our evaluation system doesn't seem to be as strong as it can be. And many people I spoke to said we really need a departmental coaching program to really help develop our learners at all different levels. People spoke about the need to expand our teaching and learning opportunities, more opportunities for teaching, more support for our WWAMI and our regional faculty who are doing a ton of teaching around the entire region, more so with students than with graduate medical education learners, but nevertheless, more support there. We need better communication about our education mission. Et cetera, expand CME. Our department used to be so actively engaged in continuing medical education. We had many faculty who built their careers around CME, and there's not that much going on in the department right now, and a call to expand that. And then you can see smaller numbers here, but a large number of people. I'll call this one out because I'm going to come back to it later, building a community of educators in our department across all of the silos of the divisions and the training programs that we have. I want to go through the next several slides are busy, and I won't read every bullet that's on them, but I take a couple of these themes and provide examples of some of the specific things that were identified under these themes. And so under the theme of protected time for teaching and reestablishing the value and culture of education, people really felt we need to make being an educator sustainable in some way, and either finding time, let alone money, such a challenge right now, but really to protect time for education. We need to figure out how we pay for this education time when the reality is that our clinical work pays for that education time. This is a tension that we just need to grapple with and try and solve a little bit. Many people asked for more transparency around educational funds flow. And there was an idea for moonlighting time for teaching, much like we have moonlighting for clinical work. Big challenge there, of course, but I thought that was a unique out of the box idea. And then more transparency around available roles for education, formal roles, both in the department and around the School of Medicine. And then under reestablishing the value of education in our culture, that we really need to focus on rebuilding this culture. Teaching now no longer seems like an everyday expected practice like it used to be. Perhaps more value placed on teaching in the promotions process. Several people spoke about an ERVU, an educational RVU, or some other similar incentive or reward system. There are many around the country, but several people spoke about that. More teaching awards to help build faculty morale, and again, rebuilding this culture of education. Again, increase med ed scholarship in the department. Could there be a departmental award for medical education innovation, much like we have for science? Some education and mentorship grants within the department, et cetera. Professional development for people. Again, you'll see the first word in the first four bullets are resources. That's a challenge right now. So, but this is what people talked about. I mentioned that we need work around the culture of evaluations, the culture of feedback, the culture of coaching and remediation for students, residents, fellows, even junior faculty. And again, this notion of a coaching program in our department came up several times. More administrative support and more infrastructure. I actually want to highlight this first bullet, this idea for division-based directors of education, so that all of the education aspects of or educational work in a department, in a division, don't just fall to the fellowship director. Two of our divisions have led the way here. Nephrology and gastroenterology have appointed division directors of education, and pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine is working on developing this right now. I just had a recent meeting with Rena Mira, the new division head there, to also move in this direction. And I would love to see this best practice roll out to other divisions so that there's more work at the divisional level supporting education. There was also several people identified the need to support clinical experiences for international medical graduates to help prepare them for residency. And so that came up, and I wanted to share that with you. And then other things under this heading that you can see. CME, I alluded to before, both providing more CME programs, but also having the opportunity to attend CME for our faculty and really develop a true strategy around CME for our department. There were ideas to increase the sites of learning to get learners out more into clinic and even to other training sites around our primary care network or up at the Northwest campus and around the WWAMI region. One thing I heard from faculty who work in the region is that many times these regional centers that are hosting our students and sometimes our residents, when they put on faculty development or local grand rounds, they have trouble accessing University of Washington faculty to deliver that content and turn to other regional medical schools like the University of Utah, University of Colorado, OHSU. And I would really like to see our faculty more engaged in regional teaching and building more bridges with our regional programs. And then finally, I said I would come back to this. I think perhaps one of the most important priorities that I heard from so many people was to really establish and build a network, a community of educators in our department across our fellowships and residencies and student programs to really bring people together and share some of our best practices, to share the challenges that we're all experiencing and having to recreate in our silos, as well as to provide mentorship for each other and sponsorship for each other, and to really, build this community, again, across divisional specialties that came across multiple times for me. The challenges are real, though, right? There's the realities of clinical practice right now, with limited resources, limited time, the expansive growth of clinical responsibilities, and the challenges that I alluded to with regards to funding, our research funding, our clinical funding, state and federal sources. And when time and money is limited, it really feels like teaching is often the first activity to be sacrificed. And that's at least how it feels to many people. And I hope to be able to change that. But it's understandable, right? Coming back to Lessing and Chopra and Drive, while the long-term business case for providing more time for teaching, that is developing a more satisfied and therefore actually more productive workforce, fares well in theory, it's actually hard to justify to those who need to focus on short-term financial metrics. And so this, again, tension between short-term and long-term needs and goals is a challenge that we really have to deal with. Why do I want to do this? What's my why? Why do I teach? In Krista McAuliffe's words, to touch the future, to change the future, to impact the future. Teachers do that. And I want to help shape our future physicians into compassionate, humanistic, and competent healers. That's my why. And my vision is to be the chief cheerleader for education in the Department of Medicine. You know, for 17 years, I focused on the learners, and it was so rewarding, as I talked about at the beginning of my talk. But now I want to focus on the faculty who run the programs, who teach our learners. My vision is to support those faculty who do the teaching, to create a department-wide community of educators to build community among this amazing group that we have in our department. My vision is also to be a liaison between this community and our department, the GME office, our School of Medicine, and our WWAMI region, and to really advocate for our education mission. And as I said, our faculty who teach. That now is what I want to do. I've been working with Trish Critic to develop specific responsibilities. Again, this slide and the next one are very busy with a lot of bullets, but my responsibilities, as outlined in much of the literature, is falls under these domains: departmental educational leadership, to oversee departmental educational finances, develop and monitor and advocate for our educational budgets, to help coordinate departmental fellowship programs, not micromanage any of these programs, but to help coordinate and support these programs and the faculty who teach in these programs. I want to work with our vice chair for research and others on the challenges to our T32 grants right now, and to bring people together on a regular basis to talk about these challenges. I want to work and liaise with the School of Medicine, with our DIO and the GME office, with the Office of Academic Affairs, with other departmental vice chairs for education. I want to help our programs really refine and submit GMAPAC applications, to do special reviews, to write letters of support for changes in program leadership, and to help programs review their ADS responses to areas for improvement or citations from ACGME. I also am starting already to get involved nationally with a vice chair of education group in medicine through our Academic Alliance of Internal Medicine. And I've co-led a couple of special forums at our recent national meetings. And we now have projects to work on with the ABIM and with the ACGME Review Committee for Internal Medicine to try to make things a little bit easier for our programs. And then some other responsibilities to really help offload the chair's office and to be a designated authority who can sign off on many of these things, as well as oversee our departmental teaching awards and budget requests and things of that sort. That's a lot. um, that's a lot. But I'm excited to embark on that. And the next steps moving forward are to, remember the advice that I heard in my listening tour, that a vice chair for education can help our department by upholding the importance and value of education alongside our other missions. And someone else who told me, this should be a happy job. This shouldn't be a painful job. And challenges, yes, but so far it's been a very happy job. I'm going to continue to collate and refine the results from my listening tour. I'm providing grand rounds to you to let you know what I am working on. And in a few weeks from now, we have an education leadership retreat where we can start reviewing these proposals and prioritize them and start working on elevating and sustaining excellence in education in our department. And again, the reason why this is so important to me, the benefits I believe of focusing on this part of our mission, the education mission, is to improve the job satisfaction of our faculty by supporting their autonomy, mastery, and sense of purpose, which will then improve the learning climate in our classrooms and on our wards and in our clinics, which will better serve our learners and which will ultimately better serve our patients and the mission of UW Medicine to improve the health of all people. That's what I'm thinking about in this new role as Vice Chair for Education. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you today and for listening to me. I really appreciate it. And I think we probably have some time for questions. Adrian, should I stop sharing the slides? Is that be helpful?
Entirely up to you, but thank you so much for sharing with us today, Ken. We really appreciate it. I'm seeing a lot of love and reaction coming across my Zoom screen. If folks have questions, please just enter them in the chat and I will read them aloud. So there's one from Gina. I found this comment of someone feeling, quote, wary of working with the next generation of learners, end quote, interesting. And inherent in this comment, I think, is it is a statement that this generation of learners is different than they were 10 years ago. And I'm curious if you have plans to do a listening tour with learners, i.e. residents and med students, because I think to figure out how to support teachers, it may be helpful to explore what learners also need.
Yeah, Gina, thank you. I really appreciate that. I don't know if you're still on listening, but yeah, I found that comment interesting is the word I'll use. And I think it speaks to the fact that there are generational differences in learners. I was different than the faculty who were teaching me. And I think our faculty may need some, you know, we need to guide our faculty on how to work across generational differences. It doesn't make it good, bad, right, wrong, but I think it's just a reality. And I love your suggestion, love it, of doing a listening tour with learners. So thanks for that.
And then from Joe Merrill, what new opportunities for funding teaching do you see, for example, philanthropy?
Yeah. Joe, thank you for that. I have had some conversations with folks, and I will say that before the recent state budgetary crisis, one of the ideas that I had been thinking about with Barbara and Trish and some folks uh, in the medical school in the dean's office was actually going to the state. We haven't had an increase in our state line of funding for education in decades. But of course, as everybody knows, there's a state budgetary crisis right now, and state funding is likely to get cut and not expanded. So that was one balloon of mine that got popped, Joe. I think philanthropy is where a lot of us are turning right now in the research environment. Uh, and and I think we need to look there for education. One thing I've noticed, Joe, is that in our department compared to other departments around the country, and this is anecdotal, of course, not not survey based, but we have we have many fewer endowed chairs related to teaching and education in our department than some other departments around the country. And so I think that's, looking in that direction is helpful. But again, there's lots of competition right now for philanthropy.
Um, Thank you. And then from Joyce. So it seems like you are Joyce Webb. Hi, Dr. Webb. Nice to see you on Zoom. It seems like you were describing the important need to rescue education and teaching from being a volunteer activity to being truly valued and rewarded. And as my millennial daughter says, quote, if you value something, you will protect time for it in the workday and pay for it. How do we do this?
I don't know, Joyce. I'm going to call you. I'm. I love that you're online, Joyce. Thank you so much, and for being here. I think two. I actually think two things. I think in some ways, we do need to have some more formal roles in the education sphere. And yes, I was um, trying to rescue it somewhat from being completely voluntary. But the truth is, we all teach every day in the midst of our other activities. And if we can provide some of those other rewards, and I think that's what Lessing and Chopra were getting at, is that it's not always money that is the prime drivers for us. And that if we can support our faculty to feel more autonomous, to gain satisfaction from that purpose, and we can help them develop mastery in teaching, that it's going to be some of both. I think, Joyce, we um, there's always that teaching in everything that we do, as some people spoke about in their clinics. There were just always students around. We just always taught, and we can't itemize every single little thing that we do as academic faculty. So I think, yes, some financial rewards and incentives, paying some time, but I think also thinking of creative ways of building this satisfaction with education in our faculty that may not always be salary based. Just some superficial thoughts, Joyce.
We'll get like another minute or so, and then if there aren't other questions, we will reclaim 2 minutes of our day for a variety of educational and clinical activities. If anyone has any last burning questions, please share them now. Great. Well, thanks, Ken. We really appreciate you being here and sharing your past, present, and visions for the future. And thanks everyone for joining us today at Grand Rounds. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Bye.
Adrian.